Hey, and welcome back to another Skag Academy video lesson. We are now going to be going over distribution schematic number 2. So let's take a quick look at the schematic. All right, this is what we have. Just like accumulation schematic number 2, this is going to be a trading range that actually does not resolve itself with a push outside of the range, right? So there's no spring, no UTAD. And if you remember what I said about accumulation schematic number 2, sometimes this can be the more confusing one, right? This can be the one that you really want to wait for deeper liquidity on, and sometimes you end up missing or have to chase a little bit. So once again, those same rules apply. Any schematic that we go over that you don't prefer or you think is a little bit more complicated, you can of course leave out. But let's take a look at a potential distribution schematic number 2 and the telltale signs of how we know we're inside of it. So what we have here is GBP USD on a 2-hour. We can see we've had a nice little run up that we've had recently. And a few things to note about the already existing price action on the chart is that as we are coming up, we are making declining efforts. There hasn't really been a significant uptick in the effort from the sellers, so price is kind of just trending along on its own here. And we are going to explore some of the next steps for GBP USD. So as this kind of plays out, what we have is just a range forming. All right, and as always, just like before, what we're looking for is any kind of shift in the supply and demand or structure, right? And we will begin to assess what happens from that point. Now, something I want to kind of start pointing out is that we are now creating this sort of resistance area up here. Effort did start to try to increase, but as you notice, we have, again, signs of price action to volume divergence. Volume is increasing here, but price is not giving way. So that might let us know that something is actually inbound here. Now we get a lot of sell volume as price begins to kind of come down and test under this previous structure here. We are going to note that this is a little bit of a structure break, right? Because there is a significant amount of volume. This could be acting as a, potential sign of weakness. So we're actually going to look at this as a potential phase A for two reasons. One, the original price action to volume divergence on the buy side, and then now we have a little bit of a break of a structure with some high effort from the sell side. So we're going to just kind of mark this out as if this is like our buying climax. And then we have just a really quick ARST, right? Another supply test up here. And then what we're looking at now is a potential sign of weakness. And we're just going to continue monitoring this as we move into a potential phase B environment. All right, so we're moving out of phase A, possibly into a phase B. We do expect this to get a little choppy now. All right, we're starting to see some heavy buying action here, but there's no real action in price to follow suit. Now we start to break higher, but notice again, price action to volume divergence. High effort went nowhere, lower effort starting to go somewhere. And we actually see some selling volume begin to come in, again, pushing us right back down to these lows. Now we have another break of structure, and again, we start to see this very heavy selling action coming in from the volume, right? So we have a change of character, or very simply just a break of structure again. All right, on higher effort, we might begin to ask ourselves, is this a last point of supply, right? What's going on with this? We kind of pushed up into the buying climax, the ST, but there's no buying action. Now we're breaking structure, a lot of sell action, price action to volume divergence. We want to start asking ourselves, is this the high? Is this the range high? Maybe wipe on lower volume. Right, maybe we push high on lower volume. Maybe we get a UTAD. Maybe this isn't an LPSY. Right, we want to look into this, but there is a lot of sell volume to the downside now. Right, we can actually even, if we wanted to try, we could reduce the time frame here, kind of break down what is happening here. You could say, okay, there's some liquidity above here. liquidity above this little range too. If we were gonna maybe try to short off this LPSY, maybe we can get somewhere up in this liquidity. All right, and we could just look for something like that and then a push outside of the range. Jump back to our 2 hour real quick. All right, just monitor what's going on. More pushes to the downside, no real follow through though. Look at this, we get a push to the upside. Now we do get a lot of volume here, right? There's a lot of effort, high effort candle here. Actually the most effort we've seen in the entire range, right? But if we take again a look at this again, all this did is push right up into our lower time frame area of interest on high effort, but we didn't break any structure, right? So at this point, we're tapping lower time frame liquidity, holding higher time frame structure. Again, price action to volume divergence. These guys don't look as committed. Even at this point, if you're like, you know what, I'm going to enter now or get an entry back up top, you have the opportunity to potentially do so. You can see a few more tests to the upside. But at this point, we are now looking at this as the LPSY. We're looking at this as, you know, the final test, right? The final test before we continue down. And now we're expecting price to play off of this phase C. And this is kind of a little bit of an expedited cycle. So you had, you know, this sign of weakness. And remember, this is a 2 hour chart. So sometimes all you get is all you get. All right, if you want to call that all the phase B, right? Really small, choppy phase B, very clear phase C area, phase C action, I mean. And we're just going to let this play out. You can see price, boom, pushes to the downside, hitting TP 1 and 2. And we just have continued effort from there. Look, smacking TP 3, creating more redistribution cycles. If we look at the effort, again, effort up into the supply, and then we just start breaking down, right? What I want to talk about is how quickly this kind of played out in the phase B, right? Very short phase B, but all the signs are there. The price action to volume divergence is all there in those earlier candles, right? You had everything you needed right up to this point, right? All you needed to see was this potential LPSY, and then just look for that test. And then after you even see that test, you have full confirmation that these highs should hold, and they're going to push to the downside. Now, I want to quickly show you guys what this looks like, again, in comparison to the schematic. Right? If we take a look at the schematic, same thing. We see the buying climax, AR, up to the ST. Again, the schematic has it where the ST is lower than the buying climax. That's not the reality of the market. Not always going to be like that, as long as the volume, again, supports it, which is what we saw, right? Lower effort the entire time. The sign of weakness, which we got over here, right, with the high volume. Then this UT, which we got right here. And as you can see, this phase B, again, pretty quick. You're basically only looking for that UT. And what you're looking at is like a dragged out phase C. So we get that UT, right? Again, declining effort the entire time. Some decent action from the sellers. Get that sign of weakness, which this schematic, again, doesn't have. It has a sign of weakness way over here. In our range, we actually ended up getting a nice sign of weakness. So all that does is add extra confirmation to our trade, pushes up into the test, which again, we expected here. This has us very dragged out, and then we tumble lower, right? So I just want to, again, train your eyes to not fall into the idea that it has to look just like the schematic, but that it has the key price action to volume characteristics that the schematics suggest, and then play it based off of that. It's not always going to play out as long as you want it to play out. It's not always going to have the structure exactly right, but the price action to volume, the law of effort, the law of supply and demand, in the end will always prevail. All right, so that's distribution schematic number 2, again with no spring. All right, no out of the range push. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, leave them below in the Discord. And as always, I will see you all in the next lesson.